A North Texas mother is fighting to get her toddler back after CPS took him without a court order and without police officers seeing an immediate need for his removal. The 2-year-old is set to be released from a hospital into a foster home tomorrow.
So let's just kind of go back to the beginning for some people who may not know. This was just like any other day for you. You're taking your kid to the doctor. If you want to go on about what happened that day at the hospital.
Okay, so back in fall of 2023, my son developed a rash, and I noticed his foot was swelling in December, so I took him to his primary care provider, and she advised me to go to Children's Dallas to obtain blood work just to make sure that, his foot swelling wasn't sepsis or systemic. So we went to Children's Dallas, we obtained the blood work. After receiving the blood work, we found out that my son had less than a local infection. However, the physician at the time wanted to prescribe clindamycin, and after just doing my due diligence and my research, I found out that clindamycin is actually blacklisted by the FDA, and it's also reserved for more severe infections. And so after conversing with this physician, I asked her, was there an alternative medication that we could use because he has less than a local infection? She suggested K-Flex. However, K-Flex is in the family of cephalosporins, and I'm allergic to those. And if I'm allergic, it's a possibility my son Josiah is. And after that, she just really wasn't open to discussing any other alternative antibiotic. And so we were discharged around 10 p.m. Shortly after that, that's when we rejected clindamycin. And at that point, I just advised her that I would be going to Josiah's primary care provider to obtain an alternative antibiotic the next day.
And at this point, what steps did you take before CPS got involved?
So on December 21st, while in the process of obtaining this alternative antibiotic, CPS is blowing my phone up. And if it was such an emergency, the caseworker could have came to the primary care physician's office. I advised her I'd be home at 4:30 if she'd want to come by then to see the antibiotic, see Josiah. And so she ended up arriving to our house around 4:30 p.m.
Hi. Hello, Ms. Sanders.
Hi.
My name is from CPS. Can I come in?
Yeah. Initially, when she opened the door, I just saw her, but after advising her, she could come in, an officer on each side of her appeared. And so she first stated, would I voluntarily take my son back to the hospital? I said, yes, ma'am, but I'm going to take him to Children's Plano, not Children's Dallas, given the, what just happened the night before.
Okay. I need to double check on that, but are y'all still willing to admit him today?
Yes, ma'am.
Yes? Okay.
You said you have a court order, right?
I will get back with my supervisor, and I will actually, yes, get you the details on that.
And so she advised me that she had a court order, and after asking to see this court order, that's when she stepped outside. At the time, I wasn't sure what that conversation was outside, but after obtaining certified copies of the police report, I now know that the police officer was speaking with her supervisor on the phone, and he asked her, should y'all include exculpatory evidence within this affidavit that y'all be submitting to the court? And the supervisor said no. And so that exculpatory evidence would be that Josiah received an alternative antibiotic, Bactrim, and that he was under care of a feeding therapist. And so when they came back inside, that's when the caseworker advised me that she'll be taking my son, and I don't have a choice.
Well, so what I'm hearing is CPS withheld evidence that Josiah was basically getting the care that he needed.
Correct.
And they removed Josiah from the house that day.
Yes, on December 21st of 2023. After coming back inside from the conversation that she had outside, that's when she advised me that she'll be taking my son, and I no longer had a choice. The thing is, though, at this point in time, we were staying in Denton County. This caseworker took my son all the way back to Children's Dallas, in the rain, in rush hour traffic. If it was such an emergency, why did you not go to the nearest hospital?
So I want to get a clear understanding. The night that you guys were at the hospital, were you discharged?
We were discharged at 10:14 p.m. on December 20th.
Okay, so you guys were discharged, but somehow this was still considered an emergency, even though the hospital discharged you guys. So now Josiah is taken out of your home. I know this was completely unexpected. Most of us would say, how did it escalate to this? And I just want you to talk about, after he's been removed from the home, what did that look like for you? I know there were some hearings that took place.
So after CPS removed my son on December 21st of 2023, I was supposed to have a full 14-day adversary hearing, and that was supposed to be at the beginning of January. However, they claimed they didn't have my address to serve me, but this is the same address that y'all removed my son from. They ended up rescheduling it again to January. However, even at that time, I didn't get the opportunity to have a full 14-day adversary hearing while I'm able to present my side, present my evidence, and do all of that. That hearing ended up being passed to February, and that's when we get into the adversary hearings. Going back to the beginning of 2024, when we were having our adversary hearings, the caseworker that removed my son, she testified in court that she did no investigation, that she did leave out material information within that affidavit, and that she initially lied about having a court order when she first removed my son. And we also had our nurse practitioner testify, the head physician of Shine Pediatrics testify as well on our behalf. And we also had one of the police officers that were present the day that she removed my son. He testified in open court. And to add on to that, the police chief came out on the news and gave his own personal statement.
Chief Jerry Gardner told me by phone what his officers observed.
The officers did not observe anything that would indicate that child was in imminent danger. They observed the child would eat, the child would drink. They saw a rash on the child, but they didn't see anything to indicate that there was an emergency. The officers did not indicate in their police report that the child appeared to be malnourished, being instructed to take the child into custody, as we were by a CPS worker, without a court order, without a directive from a judge, would be a little unusual.
After hearing the caseworker testify, after having our doctors testify on our behalf, I still don't have my son with me. He's still not home.
So you're saying the CPS worker stood there on the stand, proof that there was no investigation that she did, proof that she misled or lied, proof that there was no court order signed, and you still don't have Josiah.
I still don't have my son. I want to tell my son Josiah that I love him and I miss him, and we did everything in our absolute power to bring him back home to me today. I still don't have my son. I was given a list of different services I needed to do. Within those services, it was 10 parenting classes. It was a psychological evaluation, a psychosocial evaluation, individual counseling. I had to read a book titled Parenting with Paralysis, and I had to take a women's wellness course. I did all of those services. I even went above and beyond to even write a report on the book that I read, and also a paper on each parenting class that I took and what I learned. I did everything they advised me to do, and I still don't have my son. Even after completing all of the services that they asked me to do, and even going above and beyond writing papers, writing reports on what I learned and what they talked about within these parenting classes, there's still no efforts on CPS end to reunify. We're having all of these different hearings, and still while trying to obtain counsel and keep counsel, and there's no efforts to reunify. And so now at this point, we're moving closer to trial.
A heated legal battle over a 2-year-old toddler unfolded in a Denton County courtroom today. The state's Child Protective Services and the boy's mother are going head-to-head over his medical care.
So can you tell us a little bit about your experience with trial?
Towards the end of 2024, there was a pre-trial on November 22nd. However, the judge does not show up, there's no hearing held, and when asked, I informed the court administrator I was not ready. However, the pretrial was never rescheduled. Now we're moving into trial, and on December 9th of 2024, my attorney of record asked for a continuance.
Like I said, I'm keeping faith in God and my team as well that justice will be served and the truth will be brought to the light.
The judge denies the continuance. At this point, my attorney is forced to withdraw, not being able to adequately prepare and be able to ethically represent me, and so I'm forced to represent myself throughout this entire trial. Being a parent, that's one of your most sacred rights, and I don't have the opportunity to be able to have counsel to represent me and have a fair trial, I was forced to represent myself Monday through Friday. And so throughout that trial, I was trying to admit evidence such as a certified police report that was admitted previously. I'm trying to admit copies of the transcripts from previous hearings. I'm asking the court to take judicial notice, and I was unable to admit certain evidence that would help my case. How can I have a fair trial and I'm not able to produce certain evidence that would help me? It was unfair. Not only that, I don't have any key witnesses to testify on my behalf. I don't have my doctors, I don't have the police here, I don't have any other key witnesses that could help my case. I don't have that present. That's not a fair trial. Not only was I not able to admit certain evidence into court during trial, CPS didn't even have the doctor from the night of December 20th. She never testified. So not only did she avoid the subpoena at the beginning of 2024, she never testified at trial. And the caseworker that removed my son on December 21st, she never testified at trial. And to make matters worse, CPS filed a fraudulent affidavit during trial that nobody testified to. And if this trial is about determining whether or not a parent has the ability to parent her kid, should she keep her kid in the home or should this parent's rights be terminated, that parent has the right to face her accuser. At no point throughout this past year have I ever got the opportunity to have a face-to-face conversation with this doctor or to see this doctor up on that stand to be able to testify what happened that night. Anything we're talking about is secondhand information. The doctor never testified.
So after the trial, where did that go? Where were we left at?
So at the conclusion of trial, my parental rights were unjustly terminated, and we're now in the process of appealing that decision and taking any other necessary steps to protect my rights as well as my son's rights and to bring him home to me where he belongs.